I've spent the last 3 days testing every single augment of Frostblast, and I found some incredibly powerful combinations and some incredibly terrible combinations. I found some secret abilities, and I probably found some bugs too. I have the stats and the graphs, and this is how Frostblast actually works. I know, these videos get longer and longer every time. Luckily, if you just want the information or you're just interested in a certain piece of information, I have chapters below that you can skip to whatever section you're most interested in, or jump to the end for the final results. If you think you know what Frostblast does, you are in for a lot of surprises because there is so much more about it that you don't even know about. So let's start simple. Basic Frostblast. Create a blizzard that deals lethal frost damage on activation and slows enemies that enter it. It all seems pretty straightforward, doesn't it? You activate Frostblast, it kills the zombies nearby you, zombies that come into this radius get slowed down, pretty simple. And yes, it is basically that straightforward. Taking a look at the basic stats here, you can see that Frostblast will charge with 90 kills. Now, I know I need to look at all of the other field upgrades and their charge times, but I know for a fact that Dark Flare charges in 120 kills, so this is at least less than that. Upon activation, it deals 100% of the base zombie damage to all zombies within the range, that range being a 4-meter radius or an 8-meter diameter, centered around the player, of course, pretty straightforward, and this Frost Cloud will last 5 seconds. Now, for zombies that come into the Frost Cloud, they will be slowed, and they will be slowed until Frostblast is done. This is very different than something like Cryo Freeze. As far as I'm aware, Cryo Freeze puts the slowed effect on the zombies per zombie, but all of your slowed zombies from Frostblast are going to stop being slowed as soon as your Frostblast is done after that 5 seconds. This is very important, and I think we'll talk about it later, because we are already at our first secret ability of Frostblast, and that is the fact that you get a damage increase on slowed enemies. So yes, every enemy that has this slowed icy effect on them will take an increase in damage. How much damage? It's going to be a 25% increase to all of those slowed enemies. And yes, I mean all of those slowed enemies. And now that's most of the information you need about the basic Frostblast. Let's start simple by talking about the minor augments, starting with Extension. Significantly increase the blizzard duration. And Extension is thankfully pretty straightforward. It takes the duration of Frostblast from 5 seconds to 10 seconds, which is double. That's pretty significant too. Moving on to Frostbite. Increase damage to frozen enemies. Now the wording on this one isn't my favorite because it says increase damage to frozen enemies, whereas this increases damage to all of the slowed enemies. And this is a common theme here. You're going to notice with Frostblast there's like frozen enemies and then slowed enemies. But Frostbite is increasing damage to the slowed enemies, the ones that don't get insta-killed by the initial activation, and the ones that come into the radius that get slowed and are chilled. Where we had a 25% increase before, with Frostbite, that's going to increase that damage to 75%. That alone is incredibly significant. That is a huge damage increase. To put that into perspective, the first augment of Deadshot combined with Deadshot gives you a 15% increase to your critical damage. Double Impact from Double Tap will give you a 50% increase to every other bullet. Frostbite, out the gate, if it's a slowed enemy, will deal 75% an increase in your damage. And believe me, it gets even crazier, but we'll get there. We need to talk about extra charge first. This increases your maximum charges by 1. And yes, that's exactly what it does. You can now hold 2 charges. However, this is where we have another sort of secret ability, because equipping the extra charge augment will also reduce the amount of kills you need to charge up Frostblast. Not only that, there is a speed cola augment that also further reduces the amount of kills it takes to charge up your field upgrades, and there's a gobblegum called Arsenal Accelerator that also does the same thing. And I decided to test out every single possible combination of these things. So you can see right here, I've done a handful of tests. These are incredibly consistent. Once you start doing this by yourself, if you ever test this by yourself, it's really consistent how these charge times are. Points don't matter, kills, criticals, doesn't matter, it's just regular kills. And there are things like kill streaks and equipment that don't count towards these kills. When an insta-kill is active, it will reduce the amount of kills that count towards your field upgrade. So I made sure to make this as isolated as possible. And here you can see with the extra charge, we have 65 kills. If we don't have extra charge and we just have the base speed cola augment, we're going to charge in 76 kills instead of 90 kills. If we have not the extra charge and we have just the regular base Frostblast, we put on Arsenal Accelerator. That's going to bring us down to 55 kills. If we combine all of that, we have the base no extra charge with the speed cola augment as well as Arsenal Accelerator Accelerator, we can charge up one of these Frost Blasts in 46 kills, nearly half of our base. And this is where we yet again encounter the same glitch that we had way back with Dark Flare. You see, if you have the extra charge augment with Arsenal Accelerator, it does quite literally nothing. That's right, one of those gobblegums that you can get just doesn't work with extra charge. You can see our extra charge by default is 65 kills. We put on extra charge and Arsenal Accelerator right here, and it's still 65 kills. Luckily, the Speed Cola augment does combine with extra charge, so that way you can get it charged up in 54 kills. But if you have the extra charge and Speed Cola and then you put on Arsenal Accelerator, well, you're still gonna get it charged up in 54 kills. It is bugged with the Arsenal Accelerator and extra charge. That is what I call a ripoff. Now, I made this graph, it's a little confusing. We can see on the left, we have the base Frost Blast. On the right with the green, we have the extra charge, which is gonna be less. So you can see by default, the base has 90 kills and the extra charge does 65 kills. You can see with Speed Cola, that brings the base down to 76. It brings the extra charge down to 54. Combining that with Arsenal Accelerator brings the base down to 55. But like I said, it's glitched. It keeps the default speed with Arsenal Accelerator with the extra charge at 65. And then with Speed Cola and Arsenal Accelerator, it's going to bring the base down all the way to 46. And then the extra charge is going to be glitched as if you didn't have Arsenal Accelerator, and it's going to keep it at the Speed Cola 54. Hopefully that makes sense. Now with the minor augments out of the way, let's start the major augments with Ice Slick. Enemies within the blizzard may be knocked down. Now this augment was the one that I was least excited for. Even during testing, I had it against a group of zombies. I activated my Frost Blast. They all got knocked down. Now, luckily, most of them got knocked down. This is a little bit more powerful than I thought it was going to be. I thought it might be one here and there. It might not be that powerful, but no. This knocks down zombies really consistently. And I thought, okay, so that's going to be nice, but it's not going to work up against most of the specials or elites. And, you know, I tested against the Mangler. That didn't work. Abomination, clearly that didn't work. I went into the tomb and what? You're seeing that right. The Ice Slick Major Augment knocks down the amalgams. This is hilarious. Not only that, but this also knocked down the Doppelgast. But that's about where our luck ended. As you can see right here, this is a pretty arbitrary 99%. It knocks down most of everything, but even though it doesn't knock down the Mangler, Abomination, or the Mimic, or Disciple, or, you know, any of the bosses, it does knock down the Amalgam and the Doppelgast. And what's really funny is that I was using this in the tomb getting golden armor, and I used it against the HVT Amalgams, and can you notice this? This is kind of hard to see. It looks like it knocked them over too. I don't know what to make of this because it doesn't work against Manglers or Abominations or the Mimics, but against Doppelgasts and Amalgams, this might be a very, very valid augment to run. So yet another surprise, the Amalgam gets knocked down by Ice Slick. Pretty slick, if you ask me. Let's move on to Frostcast. The Blizzard moves forward when activated. This augment makes it so that the Blizzard moves forward when activated. Just how much does it move forward? Well, this moves forward by default a whopping 12 meters. Once again, this took me by surprise. This is such a huge range, a huge distance to move. Everyone was so excited for Frostcast, and I could see why. If you have a line of zombies, which happens often when you're training, you activate Frostcast and it goes down the line. And now that you know, slowed zombies, the zombies that are affected by Frostblast but don't die in the activation, take an increase in damage. You can have a whole line of zombies have an increase in damage for 12 meters. And right away, I know you're asking, Donuts, what happens? What happens when you put extension on this? And I wanted to wait till the end, but there's still so much more stuff, so I'm going to give it to you. With extension, Frostcast now also lasts 10 seconds, but it also goes for 24 meters. It is so difficult to find a spot in zombies that is 24 meters long that is going to be practical. This combination of extension and Frostcast might be too good. It might be too powerful to even be viable, because when are you ever 24 meters away from something, 10 seconds away from something that you need to deal damage to or to slow down? It's hilarious. I love it. It's incredibly fun. I feel like a wizard for some reason, and it just looks cool. And on top of that, I used this on the top of a rooftop in Liberty Falls when testing this, and it goes off of the rooftop down on the ground. Now, it doesn't go through walls or anything, so I imagine it only goes modes where players can walk, but even still, I feel like the amount of sandbox play with Frostcast is so cool. It's a shame that we have to go from one of the most fun augments to flash freeze. Normal enemies within the blizzard will be frozen solid and killed when damaged. This augment was the augment I was most excited about. This is what made Frostblast in Cold War so good. I was excited, oh my goodness, it's gonna be so powerful, and upon using it, it kinda just sucked. And looking over my footage and testing it out, I was trying to figure out why. I thought this was glitched at first because a lot of the time, and it still might be by the way, a lot of the time a zombie will appear frozen and it has the cold stuff all over it, and then you shoot it and it's not an insta-kill. And that's when I found out that it takes 2.5 seconds for zombies to freeze. Let's just think about this for a moment. Frostblast lasts 5 seconds, and it takes half of that time for zombies to freeze permanently. When I have zombies 4 meters away from me, I don't have 2.5 seconds to wait for them to become an insta-kill. This thing is garbage. And even after that, like I said, I would love it if it consistently one-shot all of these frozen enemies, but there are 2 problems with this. One, it does not. It does not consistently one-shot these frozen enemies. I don't know if it's a glitch. I don't know if I have a fundamental misunderstanding of how this works, but it is, I see zombies that are not moving at all. I shoot them and they don't die. I'm gonna chalk that up to it being glitchy and inconsistent, whatever, but the biggest problem is in trying to find out how long these enemies were frozen for, I figured out, and it took me a lot longer than it probably should have, that they are only frozen until Frostblast is over. It's not like you can activate Frostblast and then you freeze all the zombies and the zombies are frozen for a good 5 or 10 seconds and you can maneuver around and then shoot them and insta-kill them. No. As soon as your Frostblast is over, the insta-kill window is gone and they start thawing out and moving again. So I'm going to remind you, Frostblast lasts 5 seconds. It takes half of that time to freeze zombies to make them an insta-kill, and then you have to actually shoot them, which takes a little bit of time, and then 2.5 seconds later, Frostblast is over, and therefore they are no longer an insta-kill. The window you need to insta-kill these zombies is so incredibly, ludicrously terrible. Not only that, that 2.5 seconds is if the zombie immediately goes into the ice storm as soon as you activate Frostblast. If you get a zombie that walks into the Frostblast at the very end of its duration, good luck. You are never, ever going to get an insta-kill from them. This might be the single most offensive augment I've ever reviewed. I don't know why I'm so angry at this, but this pissed me off. I was so excited for this. I had high hopes for you, Flash Freeze, and you Flash suck. But donuts, I hear you saying. What if we add on extension to this? 10 seconds, that's a whole lot bigger of a window, right? Well, turns out this 2.5 seconds that we have here isn't exactly right. When we add on extension, we will get an increase in duration to 10 seconds for sure of the Frostblast duration. However, the time to freeze is also extended. It is extended to 5 seconds with extension, which means that probably in the code, this time to freeze whatever attribute isn't hard coded to 2.5 seconds. It's probably coded to 50% the duration of the Frostblast. This is part of the reason I was going crazy. I would use extension and flash freeze and they would take forever to freeze. And then I would take everything off. Okay, I'm just using flash freeze and they would take 2.5 seconds. What's going on? I figured out when you use extension, you are making this augment even worse. And yet again, when zombies are 4 meters away from me and I want to freeze them, I don't have 5 seconds. I don't have 2 seconds, let alone 5 seconds to just sit there and wait until they're an insta-kill. I hope this gets patched. This needs to change. They need to be instantly frozen. Now, practically speaking, if they were instantly frozen, I could see this being an issue because then you would have like a wall of frozen zombies right at the start of your Frostblast effect. So maybe they have to further reduce this to like a second or half a second so that way you can let some zombies walk into the Frostblast. I don't know. All I know is the way it is now sucks so bad. And as you can see, it doesn't work against any of these special or elite enemies. So that's it, right? Pretty underwhelming field upgrade, yeah? Well, we are not even close to being done yet. You still have no idea a fraction of the power that Frostblast has. Because you see, when you activate Frostblast, yes, you will deal 100% of the base zombie health to normal zombies, but I conveniently left out how much damage you do to special and elite enemies. By default, right off the bat, nothing else, nothing different. You will deal 312.5% of the base zombie health towards special and elite enemies. So when you activate this and there's a mimic or a doppelgast or an amalgam nearby, you will deal 312.5% of the base zombie health. Now I will show you how powerful that is, but this gets even better. Because while testing this, I had the thought, Frostbite here says an increase in damage to frozen enemies. So surely that doesn't have anything to do with the activation damage. I mean, the activation damage is set, it's 100% for zombies anyway, so why would they even bother coding that? Well, turns out the Frostbite minor augment allows you to deal 437.5% of the base zombie health to special and elite enemies upon activation. I'm not kidding. Take a look at this. Right here, this is the rounds. This is the base zombie health of that round. In fact, let's just hide this a little bit, make it a little cleaner here. You can see I have the augment that I was using, the enemy I was going up against, what round it was on, how much damage I did with the activation. This is the activation damage. And then the zombie health at that round, and then the percent of the base health at that round. So as you can see, anything with the base augment is going to be dealing 312% base damage. But then when I add on a Frostbite, you can see we're dealing substantially more at that 437.5% of the base zombie health. And of course, the stinking abomination has that tough outer shell that just reduces so much damage, it's not even worth trying to use it against him. As an outlier here, something happened with these mimics. I'm not entirely sure. It was round 8 and round 17. I don't know if they weren't like close enough, because I have other mimics that have the exact same properties, and I tested more than this. This was just to show you. I don't know if there's like a range to this, but this was incredibly consistent except for these couple mimics. But in terms of the high round effectiveness of this, you could see we have the base numbers here and the Frostbite numbers here. These are the damage numbers you're going to do to the special enemies. And all the way down at health cap, you're going to be dealing over 150,000 damage to special enemies with the base, but when you put on Frostbite, you're gonna deal 218,000 damage to special enemies at round cap. Now, donuts, for the past 6 months, you've been saying that special enemies have 150,000 HP. Today, I'm here to confess I was wrong. In another twist of events, I was wrong about the HVT and the elite damage. I was wrong about, I don't know why I didn't check it. I was wrong about the special damage. Special enemies have 250,000 health. Now, I think I got this wrong because I'll show you a clip of the Liberty Falls gameplay I used to actually figure out this special damage. And you can see I was using a mutant injection because I thought the mutant injection was showing me the health of the special enemy. Why I thought that, I don't know, I'm an idiot, but the mutant injection is showing me how much damage I'm dealing to the special enemies, and with some minor calculations, I can confirm 250,000 points of health is how much special enemies have. Now, I will throw up some footage of me using this at health cap against Doppelgast, or at least close to health cap with Doppelgast, and it's taking them down most of the way. If you're playing the Tomb and you're surrounded by 2 Doppelgasts and 2 Mimics and you just activate this, you could take care of it. I mean, in some of these instances, I had 3 Doppelgasts up my butt and I just demolished them in one charge of Frost Blast. I didn't insta-kill them, they didn't die from that charge, but they were brought down to next to no health. Now, I did make a graph. It's not the best graph because you can see at the very top here, we have 250,000 health. This is the special enemy health at health cap like we just discussed, but the special enemy health does scale with the rounds just like the zombies do. So you can see down here, this is the zombie health that's scaling for the rounds. This special enemy health will do the same in reality. It will curve just like all of this stuff up here. I just put 250,000 just to show you specifically this area of the graph to see just how close we are to insta-killing all of these special enemies if you have Frostbite on your Frost Blast. Even if you don't, even if you have the base Frost Blast, you're dealing, what is this? Like, I want to say like 3/4 or maybe 2/3 of the special enemy health at health cap. That is pretty darn good. I wish I knew how the damage scaled or the health scaled for these special enemies, so this could be an even better graph, but I figured this was better than nothing. And so no matter what you do, no matter what augments you have on, the base Frost Blast is gonna deal a lot of damage to those special enemies at the higher rounds. And if you put on Frostbite, that it's gonna be even better. And that's regardless of any other augments you have on. But that, my friends, is just the activation damage. If you remember, all of the zombies within the snow cloud will be dealt an extra 25% increase in damage. I had the dumb idea, I had the dumb thought of what stacks with this damage. And by stacking, I mean, You know, there's elemental damage, like the Disciple is weak to Deadwire and Lightmen. So if I'm shooting Deadwire at the Disciple, I'm getting a 50% increase in damage. Does that 50% increase in damage stack with this 25% increase from Frostblast? If I throw down a Molotov and I light the zombies on fire that are affected by Frostblast, does that get an increase in damage? Do kill streaks like the new Death Machine get an increase in damage? And do the augments of Double Tap stack with all of that damage? Beautiful people, the answer is yes. Everything stacks with this damage. Everything. I'm not lying to you. Everything is affected by this damage increase. I have spent days testing everything and it all works. It all works. But let's walk you through it here. This is insanity. Let's start with elemental damage because in my opinion, this is the most practical application of Frostblast. Spoiler alert, this is why I love this field upgrade. And I have to remind you, we are not talking about the activation damage anymore. We are talking about the damage to the zombies from your own weapon, from your own kill streak, from your own equipment, whatever, to whatever zombie or special elite enemy in this case. This is how much damage your gun is doing to all of the enemies within the ice cloud. Starting simple, we know the Frostblast base, which is so hard to say, is going to give you a 25% increase in damage. So you can see our base damage. I did all of this testing, triple pack a punch of legendary with the new Ladra, which I don't really like that SMG. This is our base damage. We had on Deadshot. I didn't have any of the double tap augments until later because I wanted it to be really clean numbers and really obvious when a hit was dealing more damage or not. So I just had like rapid fire and double jeopardy, or I think even took off all of the major augments of double tap. But as you can see, by default, we're going to deal that 25% increase. We add on Frostbite to this, and we get an increase to 175 bonus damage. We knew that before, pretty darn good. But then we have the elemental damage. So this is just the regular Frostblast, by default, no augments, whatever, with the elemental damage, no elemental pop, just putting on Deadwire of the gun. We are dealing 7,000 damage from 4,000 damage about. That's 187% an increase in damage. You add on the Frostbite augment to Frostblast and just keeping the regular elemental damage, no vulnerability yet, and we're dealing over 10,000 damage of this weak SMG to any special or elite enemy's elemental weakness. 262% increase. We're just getting started. We go back to the base version of Frostblast. We put on Vulnerability with the elemental damage, and we get an 8,000 damage, which is a little bit less. It's 218%, whatever. But then you put on everything. You put on the Frostbite, which gets you that extra damage. You put on Vulnerability, which gives you the extra further elemental damage, and you're dealing a whopping 12,111 damage per bullet on the fastest firing SMG in the game. 300% damage. And as you could see, all of this works with double impact and double or nothing. So technically, and I've seen it, it is possible. And I hope you guys can see my calculator here. If we have the 12,111 damage, and then we multiply it by the 50% increase of double impact, and then if we get lucky and double or nothing activates, that's double that damage. That is a potential of 36,333 damage in one bullet. And I really hope in the like 12 hours of footage I've recorded for this thing, I find out exactly where this is because it's insane. It's so many numbers. I know this is really confusing, but I want to walk you through it here. So here's 3,954 damage. That's our base damage. That's our base critical damage. We're using Frostbite, which gets us an additional 1.75 damage. That's an extra 75%. So that's 6,920, which is right here. And then on top of that, if we have Vulnerability, we're dealing another 1.75 damage. And there you go. It's a little bit of rounding, 12,111 damage right there. That is insane. And like I said, it doesn't even stop there because I thought surely that just meant bullet damage. No. It even applies to your equipment. That's right, round 32, I put a Molotov on the ground. I was dealing that amount of damage. I forget all of the augments that I had on. It wasn't a really big test, but I activated Frostblast, and what do you know? I was dealing even more damage. Same thing, Molotov again with Frostblast. There you go. That's an extra 200% damage. And I did test it with at least the Death Machine, and the Death Machine was getting more damage on the frozen enemies too. Anything inside of the Frostblast cloud is going to receive an increase in damage in some way, shape, or form. It's nuts. And when I say anything, I think I mean anything, because the very last thing I did was play a game of Shattered Veil and went to the boss fight because I thought, okay, I need to test this out against at least one boss. And so I'm in the boss fight and I take note of my critical damage and I see, okay, around 700 critical damage. I activate Frost Blast hilariously close to the Z-Rex. I shoot him in the eye and I am somehow getting additional damage to the Z-Rex. Now, I didn't test it very extensively. This was day 3. This is the last thing I just did. I had no hope. I had no hope this was going to work. I was like, I just got to do it for the thoroughness, just make sure it doesn't work. And somehow, someway, I don't know if I was just too close to the Z-Rex, but you could see for yourself, I am getting extra damage with Frost Blast. Now, how practical is that? Pretty impractical, right? But that might mean that even though I didn't test it against Patient 13 or the Guardian, that maybe, just maybe, the Z-Rex also gets this bonus damage. Now, I might test this in the future and let you know, but in terms of practicality, I don't know how practical that's going to be. I hope you guys can forgive me. I literally have been doing this for 3 days. I'm going crazy. And the worst part is, beautiful people, we're not even done yet. Because not only does all of this bonus damage count towards all of our grenades and equipment and elemental damage, it also stacks with Cryo Freeze. And Cryo Freeze affects every single zombie. And so yet again, I had to test out not only all of the different permutations of Frost Blast, but take those and compare them to every single combination of Cryo Freeze. Now, the reason this is important more so than the weapon damage is because Cryo Freeze has a secret ability that we'll get to that increases your damage to frozen zombies, just like Frost Blast. Keep that in your brain. But this ability, like we just discussed, stacks with the base ability of Frost Blast. So we're going to speed run through this. Base Frost Blast is going to be 25% with Frostbite, 75%. Base Cryo Freeze is 25%, and the Freezer Burn, the increase in damage augment of Cryo Freeze, gets you about 130 or 37.5% increase in damage. When you combine all of this together, you get the extra damage version of Frost Blast, you get the extra damage version of Cryo Freeze, you can deal 9,000 damage, 240% extra damage to base zombies within your Frost Blast. I'm telling you, there is a specific build of Frost Blast that almost acts like a secret hidden ring of fire. You could deal 300% damage to elites, you could deal 240% damage to regular zombies, but it's like an inverse of Ring of Fire, only zombies within this ice cloud. And all of these numbers, it might be a little bit of numbers for you, but so let me show you the graphs just real quick. Here you can see the weapon damage versus the zombies with the Ladra. This is a little bit of practicality in your brain. You can see our base damage is in the blue. That's going to be the same across the board. The extra damage is going to be the augment combination to the right. And so you can see the degree of extra damage you're getting depending on what augment you choose. By default, the Frost Blast is here. By default, here's the Cryo Freeze. You've got the extra damage of the Frost Blast. You got the extra damage of the Cryo Freeze. You put both of them together and here you go. That's a lot of extra damage. Going back in time a little bit, you can see the weapon damage versus the special and elite enemies. And the reason I'm focusing so much time on this is because this is not insignificant. If you have just the base version of Frost Blast and Vulnerabine, which I run all the time, you're going to be dealing so much more damage to those elite enemies. It's crazy. All of these things are really crazy. And if you want just the regular like stats and like percentages, there they are here. And then same thing with the normal zombies right here of all the different augment combinations with Cryo Freeze. This spreadsheet will be linked in the description if you want to take a look at this for yourself. But again, using Frostbite and Frostburn, 240% bonus damage to all the zombies. That's pretty powerful. But donuts, I hear you say, I don't want to run Cryo Freeze. What enemy is weak to Cryo Freeze? Well, that's a good point. And I hear you. And to that I say, well, there's good news and bad news. The good news is there is a secret interaction with Cryo Freeze that Frost Blast has. The bad news is that I believe this to be a glitch and might be patched. Because as I was doing all of this testing, I noticed some inconsistencies, especially around our elemental damage and some of this damage too. I was like, what's going on? And I realized, I don't know if it's all the time, I don't know if it's some of the time, or if I'm doing a specific thing to make this happen, but I realized that you don't even need Cryo Freeze equipped to get some bonus damage. This is a different game. I have the base version of Frost Blast equipped. I have the base version of Cryo Freeze not equipped, not anywhere on my gun. I don't even have an ammo mod on. I never did. And still somehow I am getting an extra bonus. And I notice with this damage number, it's 156% bonus damage, which is exactly the same as this bonus damage with the base Frost Blast and base Cryo Freeze. So I went into the menu and I kept the base Frost Blast, and then I put on Frostbite, and I went back in game, and what do you know? I got an extra bit of bonus damage, 171% right there. You say that? There you go, 171% right there. This is too much for me. This is too much. I have no idea what's going on. I am positive this is a glitch, but this then goes into the secret hidden ability that everybody's kind of figured out by now. The augments that you put on Cryo Freeze heavily affect Frostblast. Look at this incredible clip of Frostblast at health cap here. I activate Frostblast. It's Frostcast, by the way. I throw it. I destroy this disciple or doppelgast. It goes into the horde of zombies. I kill the zombies, and you can see these ice clouds forming, just like Cryo Freeze. Now, some people think that's just the base version of Cryo Freeze. And by the way, I chained together this Cryo Freeze ice storm thing for such a long time, like 40 seconds. And notice on my weapons, Cryo Freeze is not on there. It's not even close to me. I have like Shadow Rift and Deadwire. Cryo Freeze isn't anywhere on here. And so some people think this is just a base ability of Frostblast, that it shares the augments of Cryo Freeze. And if that's true, that's cool and awesome, and I think I love it, but also I'm afraid that it's a glitch and it might be patched. But coming full circle, that means that if you're somebody who, like me, I don't really run Cryo Freeze all that much because I'm so busy trying to deal as much damage to all of these special and elites as I can, it means that if I'm running Frostblast, I could put on whatever augments of Cryo Freeze that I want, that extra damage, and I could get the extra damage from Cryo Freeze and save my augment, my minor augment of Frostblast for something else, like extra charges, or further damage, or, you know, something else. But this field upgrade, these augments are crazy. They're insane. And I do want to show you the rest of this spreadsheet here. This is the duration stuff. There's nothing too much on here. So you can see our duration here. You can see the base Frostblast effect works with all of these things. And like I said, it kind of works with the Z-Rex, and I'm going to have to test it out against Patient 13 and the Guardian, but I figured you guys wouldn't want to wait a whole other day for me to test that out. In terms of the insta-kill, obviously only works against zombies for that tight little window, and then nothing else. Clearly, you can't one-shot the Z-Rex. Now, again, I didn't test it out against those things, so I guess that's not fair to say, but I think that'd be broken and ridiculous if it one-shot all of those things. And in terms of knockdown, you can see, like we said again, doesn't knock down most things except for the amalgam and the doppelgast, and that includes the HVT, which is pretty funny. So yeah, I hope the days I've spent testing this out show up here. And one final thought on the damage, because I know I hyped up the damage a lot. If you were following me on my channel or Discord, I was hyping up all of this damage that it can do. And yes, the 900%, the 240% is really fun, but I want to remind you that it's only going to slow the zombies until Frostblast is done. So as awesome and fun as all of these crazy damage numbers are, your window to do them only lasts like 5 seconds or less, which comes awfully close to running into the same problem as this flash freeze did. But I still think there are some practical and powerful augment combinations that can fully utilize the insane damage that this does. But let's review, shall we? If you use the timestamps to get here, boy, you missed a journey. Base Frostblast takes 90 kills to charge. It will kill all of the zombies instantly within the 4-meter radius. It will then slow all of the zombies that come into that ice cloud. By default, that frost cloud lasts for 5 seconds. And surprise effect, you deal 25% increase in damage towards all of those zombies. What counts as damage? Well, your weapon, your equipment, your ammo mod, your kill streaks, anything that can deal damage to zombies will get that 25% increase in damage. When you activate this next to a special enemy, you will deal by default 312.5% of the base zombie health to that special enemy, which is pretty nuts. Ice Slick will knock down most of the regular zombies in the area, but unfortunately it doesn't work for most things except for the amalgams and doppelgasts, including the HVT doppelgasts, which is quite hilarious, and practically probably one of the more useful things here. Frostcast will send out the Frostblast effect 12 meters ahead of you. Adding on extension, this distance is increased to 24 meters. This is also really funny. Flash Freeze will freeze enemies within the Frostblast ice cloud. The enemies take 2.5 seconds to freeze, and they're only frozen until Frostblast is over. Practically speaking, this is pretty terrible. Extension will extend the duration of Frostblast to 10 seconds. This does combine with Frostcast to get that 24 meters that we talked about, and it will also interact with Flash Freeze. However, big point here, putting extension with Flash Freeze will make it so that zombies take 5 seconds to freeze instead of 2.5 seconds. This augment essentially nerfs Flash Freeze. Use at your own risk. Frostbite will increase the damage to slowed enemies to a 75% increase, again, all of the damage, equipment, kill streaks, cryo freeze, everything counts. It will also increase the activation damage against specials and elites to 437.5% of the base zombie health. This one is really fun. Extra charge will give you 2 charges, and it will bonus reduce the charge time from 90 kills to 65 kills. And a bonus hidden effect, currently right now it might be a bug, but whatever augments you have on Cryo Freeze are going to naturally pair with Frostblast. You do not even need to have an ammo mod on, you don't need to have Cryo Freeze on. As you can see at round 55, I have Ice Cloud on without Cryo Freeze even being active on any of my weapons. This includes the extra damage that you could do with Cryo Freeze. This includes the increased chance of Cryo Freeze activating, the Ice Cloud activating. If this is intended, this is incredibly powerful and you should choose the right augments for Cryo Freeze accordingly. If this is a bug, then you probably don't need to worry about it because it's probably going to be fixed soon. Now, in terms of augment recommendations, where do I even begin? First and foremost, avoid flash freeze right now. It's garbage. The first build I recommend to you is going to be using Ice Slick, believe it or not. This is my Amalgam Revenge augment combination. Because amalgams fall down due to Ice Slick, and as we know, your elemental damage gets a bonus effect when they're in the Frostblast cloud. You can run either Frostbite for a further increase in damage or Extension for a longer Frostblast duration, or really extra charge if you want just to beat up more amalgams. But save this for when you see a Doppelgast or an amalgam or a mimic or whatever special enemy you don't like, or even a disciple. And the Ice Slick will not only knock over the amalgams and Doppelgast, but it will knock over the regular enemies, so that way you could just focus all of your effort to beat up whatever special or elite enemy you have. The next build is going to be using Frostcast, and even though Extension increases this to 24 meters and is really silly, I'm gonna go either extra charge or Frostbite because this is gonna be kind of the more general crowd control-esque field upgrade combination. If you want a little bit of extra damage, you can go Frostbite, but I personally really love how fast this thing charges with extra charge. And plus, if I can just use the Cryo Freeze augment for the extra damage, plus remember, double tap also is affected by this increase, that 25% increase in damage of the base version of Frostblast, that is usually enough for me. Now with Frostcast, I usually like to set up the zombies so that they're in a line, and then what I'll do is I could wait for either a Doppelgast or a special enemy, and then I will activate it so that the special enemy is within my radius of the activation, so they take a bunch of damage, but then the Ice Cloud will move towards the horde of zombies, so that way after I kill the elite or special or whatever, I could then do extra damage to the horde of zombies, and they're a safe enough distance away from you that you're not being surrounded. Those are the 2 most practical builds that I have found works for me. But now I just need to speak candidly. As amazing as some of these stats are, I am incredibly underwhelmed by Frostblast, but I don't think it's terrible. In fact, I think we can get there. I'm going to show you a couple clips of me trying to use Frostblast the way I used it back in Cold War, and the way that you would kind of intuitively use it. That is, as a defense. It kills everything around you and slows everything coming towards you. And yet, I don't know if it's just my own skill, I mean, I did make some bad decisions, but that was kind of on purpose. I wanted to put myself in a bad situation, and when I used Frostblast, I didn't feel safe. I didn't feel like it did its job. 9 times out of 10, I would have preferred either Shroud or Frenzied Guard or even Dark Flare as a way of getting out of that bad situation. And especially Tesla Storm, because Tesla Storm, I mean, nothing's gonna hit you with Tesla Storm, but with Frostblast, yes, it killed all of the zombies around me, but I don't think the slow effect is slow enough. After the Frostblast killed the zombies around me, if I was on a high round, the super sprinters would just instantly be on me anyway, and even regular running zombies would still be up my butt anyway. And in Black Ops 6, we have 50 plus zombies on map, the most zombies we have ever seen. It's so awesome. We have all of these zombies, but you have all of these zombies coming at you. Yes, you kill all of them around you, but you still have the whole horde. So as a defensive field upgrade, as a get out of jail free card, it is the worst that we have of all of these other field upgrades. But as we all just learned, it has some magnificent offensive capabilities for 5 seconds. It is great that it can do all of this extra damage, but during all of this testing, that extra damage was sensationally inconsistent. And I don't know if this was because of the cryo freeze mixing with things. I don't know if this was bugged in some sort of way, especially with that flash freeze stuff. It felt as though the visual indicator of the frost and the ice on the zombie didn't necessarily mean that it was going to have the damage increase or that it was slowed in any way. Same thing with the freeze. Like it felt as though the visual indicator of the zombie being frozen wasn't an indicator of it being frozen. And I feel like there's a simple fix to this. Yes, the inconsistency's there, but I want to go one step further because this extra damage that Frost Blast does only lasts until Frost Blast is done. The frozen zombies only last, they're only frozen until the Frost Blast is over. And so I suggest adding on a specific time duration of how long these enemies are slowed for and how long they're frozen for, in addition to substantially reducing the amount of time it takes for zombies to freeze, like I said way long ago. What this would do is that if a zombie walked into the ice cloud just as it was ending, if they were still slowed for another 3 to 5 seconds, then you still got the extra damage bonus. That means this would be an actually decent blend of offensive and defensive capabilities. But as it stands now, this insane damage, this 900% damage, this 300% damage is only there for the zombies who walk into the Frost Blast after you've activated it only until it's done, which is like 3 seconds. Practically, it's like 3 or less seconds. And even in the augments that I recommended, yes, it's great that we can just bully an amalgam and kick him while he's down, but as we all know, you could do the same thing with Dark Flare, and you could kill the entire horde of zombies behind the amalgam with Dark Flare. So why would you ever try to get close to these zombies with Frost Blast? This has to be one of the most confusing augment reviews we've ever done. So let me know, am I wrong here? Do you guys like Frost Blast? Do you guys see the potential of it? Are you guys excited to use it again? Please join the Discord, send me your clips of you using it. Maybe we're missing something, maybe I missed something. And if you want to see what a true underrated offensive field upgrade is capable of, I'm telling you, you are sleeping on Dark Flare. Check out my full breakdown of it right here, and as always, stay beautiful.